Hey y'all. So, yeah, I apologize. I'm doing another video in the car here. I've been working a ton of overtime ever since running for Congress. It cost me a lot of money that I didn't have, and I took a lot of vacation time, so I'm trying to make up for it. And with all this working overtime, it's extremely difficult while I'm at work to be able to do videos. So I'm finally just waiting for my wife here to get off work, so I have about an hour and figure I would do a live stream. So what I wanted to talk about there, I have two subjects that I wanted to talk about. One is Trump's attacks on John McCain that he's been tweeting out, and the other is the idea that a lot of people running for president for Democrat are seeking to remake our institutions, such as the Electoral College, the Supreme Court, other things like that. So I wanted to talk about those two things. So, hey, what's up, Pat? Thanks for joining me, as always. Yeah, I was just saying real quick, the reason I'm doing another video in the car is I'm working crazy amounts of overtime. And so I have about an hour here waiting for my wife to get off work where I could do a video, and then I'll be busy the rest of the day. So we just wanted to do that video. So let's start with John McCain and the idea that Trump is attacking John McCain. So Trump put out some tweets, and it's all focused not negatively on John McCain about the dossier. Now, I think the way the media, particularly even a lot of people in the Republican media, are treating this is unfair, at least in my opinion of it. And here's why. They make it seem like, oh, McCain was a war hero, he's dead, so we can't say anything critical of him anymore. But if you're coming up from Trump's angle where you know you didn't collude with Russia, and you know that someone that's supposed to be in the same party as you was instrumental in placing opposition research from your opponents to go to start this criminal investigation that's been going for over 2 years into Trump's Trump's presidency, then you would see why Trump would be upset. I don't understand why the reason that supposedly McCain, passed away or because of his service in the military means that Trump shouldn't be allowed to criticize his actions in this. Because it seems to me obvious that this was a witch hunt from the beginning. I have tons of videos on. This was paid opposition research. This dossier was used as justification to spy on people close to Trump. This is the biggest political scandal in the history of our country, at least in my lifetime, but I would say probably in the history of our country, where you had Barack Obama using his investigative and intelligence agencies as a weapon to go after his political opponent, and then continue to do so even after his opponent won the presidency. And these institutions being weaponized, as I've said 1,000 times, are more detrimental to our country than anything Russia or China or any foreign influence could ever do. So I think it's perfectly fair for Trump to be criticizing the people that were involved in the steps that allowed for this witch hunt to come. Now, I didn't like when Trump was, making fun of McCain's war service, war heroes don't get captured, stuff like that. Yeah, that was out of bounds, regardless of what you think of John McCain. And I happen to think that he was, largely responsible for a bunch of wars. It's not like me to bash the dead just for the sake of it. Like, that's not someone I am, but right. I hear you, Pat. But I will say, that I didn't like John McCain's politics. I thought that he was a warmonger. That's just me, I don't understand, and I find it hypocritical, the reverence now, particularly for those on the left. Oh, he was a war hero, you can't say anything about him. Yeah, go back and look at the 2008 election and how these very same people in the press treated John McCain. I don't remember that. I don't remember them saying, oh, Obama, you can't say anything negative about McCain because he was a war hero and you didn't serve. Didn't recall hearing that at all, but now apparently that's the criteria. And it goes to show, this story to me is more about the media, and again showing how hypocritical they are and how they're not really media, they're just pundits, and they're really just cheering for a side. Again, you've heard me say a lot of times that I feel at the establishment levels of the Republican and Democratic Party that actually the parties are basically the same. So when it comes to things like foreign regime change wars or bailing out bankers or Federal Reserve policy, all that type of stuff, it seems that they're always in agreement. Case in point, the only time that you'll see the New York Times or CNN or MSNBC praise Trump's when he's bombing Syria. It just goes to show that at that level, at the highest levels. Now, again, I always have to say the caveat. Does that mean that the Republican down the street from me and the Democrat down the street from me are involved in this? No. Does that mean every person at the national level? No, of course not. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying when it comes to the big issues, it seems that these two parties are more often the same. And this seems to be another example of that. They didn't want, the establishment media didn't want John McCain as president when he was running against Barack Obama. But as soon as John McCain became someone who was seen as a rival to Donald Trump, who they hate because he's seen as a potential outsider, now all of a sudden it's, oh, you can't touch this guy, he's infallible, he was a war hero. So in the span of 8 years, it totally flipped. From them saying whatever they wanted to McCain, making fun of him for picking Palin, etc., to, oh, now we have to have this reverence for him and we can't ever criticize him. I think that's ridiculous. Now, again, does that mean it's always more nuanced than just, super black and white? So I'm not saying, regardless of my feelings on John McCain as president of the United States, I don't know that Trump should be out there saying, I prefer my military people not getting captured. Not a good look for Trump. Like, that's not something you should say. If you want to say that, if you're some Joe Schmo like me, so be it. But I don't feel that way. But I do feel that what McCain did with this dossier was scummy. And I feel that he did it intentionally. I feel that John McCain was with the establishment Republicans like the Jeb Bushes that were seeking to do whatever possible, or the Jeff Flakes, to keep Trump, who was seen as a potential outsider, from rocking the boat. Because people like John McCain, more than they're concerned about their constituents, or more than they're concerned about, the country as a whole, were concerned with keeping power. And that's true of the establishment Republicans and Democrats. There's this kind of like club mentality where it's like, unsaid that, hey, we just want to be us at the top levels, the Pelosi's and the McCains and the Jeff Flakes and the Jeb Bush and the Chuck Schumers of the world. They're never going to go too hard at each other because they want to maintain that hegemony they have of the power they have over both of those parties. And so when someone like Trump, or even in the last election, though I think it's changing now, but in the 2016 election, when you had someone like Trump and Bernie Sanders that were seen as potential outsiders, regardless of what you feel, if they really were outsiders or not, the important part is that the establishment media and the establishment people in both parties thought they were possibly outsiders. And so they were going to do whatever possible to keep them from gaining power. And it failed. They bet on, well, it's okay. We got the ultimate insider. We have Hillary Clinton. She'll win. They had their media, sitting on the Billy Bush tape. They thought that would do Trump in, and it didn't. Oops. So then it was all guns ablaze to try to keep Trump from being able to do anything, such as pull out of Syria or Afghanistan, or anything serious that would hurt the establishment interests. Just keep him at bay for 4 years, do what you can, and then get someone else in there. Or, stymie him with investigations, find something you could arrest him for or charge him with, and get him impeached. That was the plan all along. They wanted to keep this power. They wanted to keep Trump out. John McCain was part of that. And as such, Donald Trump has every right to point that out. He has every right to criticize. People are more upset, and this has to do with like the concept of virtue signaling. They get more upset with the idea of how, McCain, there's no way McCain should have lost, or Romney for that matter. It's particularly Romney in 2012. But the media and all these people that are complaining, and there's Republican media or conservative media involved in this as well. You'll see people like the Daily Wire, which I check out, Ben Shapiro's site, and others that are on Trump about this, or people on Fox News. Oh, how dare you? How dare you criticize someone who passed away? Never mind that McCain's daughter took shots at Trump during his funeral. That was okay. That was deemed appropriate. Or all the people during McCain's funeral that took shots at Trump. That was fine, But Trump's not allowed to say anything in response. I think that's garbage. And again, there's a difference between if Trump wants to go out and insult McCain's military record, that's one thing. If Trump wants to go out like he is doing and call out McCain for pushing the fake dossier, he has every right to do it. The media's less concerned with the fact that we basically had a coup, that we had a president, Barack Obama, use his intel agencies to go after a presidential candidate that was his opponent, Donald Trump, and then continue to go after them once he was elected president. They're more concerned with Trump's language than that. In fact, not only are they more concerned, they flat out told you, all the media places told you, to even criticize or to suggest that there was anything untoward at the FBI or the other intel agencies, that hurts America. So we're not even going to look at that. The media has just become TMZ. They exist just to go after Trump in any way possible, whether it's he had 2 scoops of ice cream or he fed fish in the wrong way, or they don't like the insults he's making. Sure, there are times that Trump makes insults that I think's childish. This isn't one of them. Him going after McCain for the dossier isn't one of them. But, when he's going after Rosie O'Donnell, it's like, okay, dude, she's beneath you. You don't have to go after her. When he was early in his presidency tweeting about Arnold's, apprentice show not doing as well, it says, okay, that's dumb. He certainly does dumb things, but it's not that big of a deal. The media makes it seem like, oh, this is the end-all be-all. It's just so unpresidential. Well, what would be presidential? Maybe Trump should pay for some opposition research, right? Maybe he should do like Obama did to James Rosen. Maybe he should start wiretapping press that are against him. Maybe he should pay for his own opposition research and then use that as an impetus for his intel agency to spy on whoever his opponent is in 2012. That's presidential, right? The media has no problem with those actions. It's just if you happen to tweet bad words or something, then the media will flip out, right? Yeah, that's... I hear you. Yeah, I hear you, Fat. But even with Romney, you saw the media mistreated him just as well. The difference is you see the Republican media as well, going, at least during the candidacy of Donald Trump, were going after him hard, and you still see a lot. Like, I like Ben Shapiro. And here's the thing, right? Like, I watch a lot of people on the left and the right. It's impossible to find one news source or one political party or even one person. If you're a critical thinking person, you'll never find someone who totally agrees with you on all the issues. So all you can do is be open and honest. That's why I preach things like open discussion, the First Amendment, debate, civility, because we could disagree with each other. Everyone's going to disagree with me on something. So, I want to be able to talk about it. That's what I like. But, I look at people from the left and the right. I'm watching Jimmy Dore. I'm watching Dave Rubin. I'm watching Ben Shapiro. I watch Tucker Carlson. Sometimes I watch Jake Tapper. I read some of the New York Times and the Washington Post, and there's other places I go to. But it's funny to me to see people like Ben Shapiro that, you could tell he's still somewhat of a never Trumper. And he goes hard on Trump for stuff like his website, The Daily Wire, going hard on Trump for being against McCain. In fact, it seems like the only times that Shapiro or his site are pro-Trump are, one, when he's pushing Supreme Court candidates, which obviously they like, or second, when he's defending Israel. That's about it. Anything else, they're against like his trade policies. They want to... Anytime he says anything, they want to knock him down a peg. And it's funny because you look at Shapiro. Shapiro says, he flat out says, he fully believes that at least when it comes to the FBI investigation to Hillary Clinton, that they intentionally left her off the hook, that it was corrupt. Yeah, he doesn't think it's that big of a deal, which I vehemently disagree with. And then he's also, which he's right to do this, he won't say that that necessarily means corruption into the Trump-Russia investigation, which that's right. It doesn't necessarily mean that. Though I think the evidence at this point from what we can see publicly is overwhelmingly leading to that direction, which is why we need transparency and why we need Trump to declassify all these materials. But nonetheless, they'll go out, despite all of that, he'll go after Trump, or his site will go after Trump for calling out John McCain over this dossier. He has every right to do it. Can you imagine if it would have been, someone Shapiro likes more? What if it would have been Mitt Romney, who Shapiro was for in 2012? And there would have been Hillary Clinton or Obama paid for dossier, an Obama paid for dossier that was against Mitt Romney that the media pushed, and then investigations would have happened into Mitt Romney and it would have cost him the election, or if in another world Romney would have been elected, he couldn't do anything for 2 years because of this investigation. He would have been furious, but because it's someone he doesn't like, it's, oh, well, we have to leave the investigations play out. So, yeah, Trump's right to pull this out. And then, now there are questions on, did McCain personally take it to the media, or was it someone associated with McCain that took it to the media? I don't know. And Trump should be more precise in his language with these tweets. But the general scope of John McCain hated Trump so much, someone who was supposed to be in the same political party as him, that he took what he knew to be opposition-funded research that was unverified and used it to go to the FBI and possibly to the media to smear Trump. Someone that was in his own party. Just because McCain was more of an establishment person than he was actually a Republican person that cared about the will of the people in the 2016 election. And he deserves to be criticized for that. And he deserved to be criticized for a lot more, including basically being a warmonger. So, That doesn't mean I wish death upon him. That doesn't mean I wish his family ill will. But just because you died or just because you served in the military, and I have huge respect for veterans, huge. I would never discredit a veteran's service. It's something I didn't do. They're heroes. I get it. But that doesn't mean that we overlook then anything else you do that we happen to be against, especially when it's selectively applied. So for the mainstream media, when McCain's running against their guy, Obama, who cares about any of that stuff? But as soon as McCain's against Trump, then all of a sudden, oh, yes, what a hero. You can't criticize a hero. Oh, he passed away. You can't criticize a hero. So I just find that to be nonsensical. And I have no problem with Trump calling him out for the dossier. He deserves to be called out. So the other thing that I had to talk about, I didn't get to read the news much today, but I saw this going on. It's been going on for weeks now, is remember the idea where you had the Democrats saying when it was a shoo-in that Hillary was going to win, that if Trump didn't accept the results of the election, sorry, I got a cough here. If Trump didn't accept the results of the election, that, oh, it would be so damaging for the country, and he was going to lose, and he wasn't going to accept the results, and all of our institutions would suffer as a result. And you couldn't even criticize the FBI and stuff, even if they're, their head agents are texting about we need insurance policies against Trump, and they can smell Trump supporters at Walmart. Oh, no, you can't even call any of that out. That would hurt our institutions. Well, isn't it ironic that almost every major presidential candidate for the Democratic Party now is in one way or another asking to destroy these institutions? So there's all sorts of ways. We've known there's been a constant push against the Second Amendment. We know that. We know that both parties have pushed against the Fourth Amendment and the right to privacy, which is ridiculous. We know that Democrats are pushing against the First Amendment, trying to censor. Not every Democrat, again, for my Democratic friends out there, but we know that a lot of the leaders of their party are pushing against the First Amendment and the right to speech. We know that they're pushing against things like due process. We saw Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, etc., during the Kavanaugh hearing say, nope, no longer innocent until proven guilty, no longer due process. Based on your gender, we can now infer whether or not we should have believed you. That individuals, there is no such thing as truth. It was Blasey Ford's truth. Her truth was, regardless if there's any evidence, right? He should have to prove himself. He's guilty until proven innocent with Kavanaugh. We know that, and that was, again, I'm not talking about random online bloggers. That's fine. We all, all of us can have an opinion, but I'm talking people with power, actual presidential candidates for the Democratic Party. So we know they've been pushing against those institutions, but now we see that even more fundamental institutions that, well, I don't know fundamentals, but more, what's the word I'm looking for? More procedural institutions they're pushing against. So the first would be the Electoral College. Now, I remember reading in mainstream papers during the, right, yeah, exactly. You want the progressives rewriting the Constitution? Of course not. But I remember reading into, before the 2016 election, like this was early in the election, there was some mainstream articles that were predicting that there was supposedly this blue wall that Trump wasn't going to be able to crack. And so the chances of him winning were very slim with the Electoral College. And they were very confident about this. And even heard it up onto election night that the way the Electoral College was set up, and you had this blue wall of states, that Trump basically had to hit 100% in all the states that he were in play to even have a chance. And they were very smug about the Electoral College, about that. And some of these articles were even saying there's even a chance that Trump could win the popular vote, but he basically has no chance to win the Electoral College. And these were mainstream outlets. I'll try to find and link later. Maybe I can, in the comments section, I'll link back some of those articles. But it was like CNN or New York Times, places like that were saying things like this. I don't remember not one Democrat when that was the thought coming out saying, oh, wait, you mean Trump could win the popular vote and lose the Electoral College? That would be a shame. That would be a shame. We need to change that. It was only after they lost, when they saw that the blue wall that they thought they had, all of a sudden it wasn't a blue wall. And those states were in play. Now all of a sudden the system needs to change. And that's what I'm talking about, like the absurdity of this. Any group that wants power that much that they're willing to rewrite our entire Constitution, the way things have always been, they're willing to rewrite it just because they lost an election in 2016. You should be dubious of that. You should understand that it's not because they're concerned about, all the lies they're saying. Oh, well, we want these people to have more of a voice and, this is the way it should be. No, that's not what it is. What it is we lost and we don't like it. And so, therefore, we think the rules should change. Who cares if this has been the rules of the country throughout our entire history? Now, look, one of the things I said when I was running for Congress is I know I'm not the smartest person in the world. So I will default to the founding fathers. They set up what is the best system in the history of mankind, and so I think we should default to them unless we have darn good reasons to change. They had very good reasons for the Electoral College, and it's worked out pretty well so far. The only time we hear complaints about it's when when things don't go the Democrats' way. Then all of a sudden now it's not fair. Now things need to change. So let's go through some of the arguments that you'll hear. The argument is, well, because they lost the popular vote, that, if you're in San Francisco or if you're in New York City, your vote doesn't really matter because of the Electoral College, and those states will always go whichever way they'll go. Yeah, but you still get your vote within that state. Now, let's look at the state level for example. Let's look what happens in a state like Pennsylvania, where I'm at. I live in central Pennsylvania, rural Pennsylvania. We have no deciding powers when it comes to the state level governance because Erie, Pittsburgh, and Philadelphia, there's also the point of superdelegates, which I'll get to, but you have these major cities that they have so many people, their voice is all that matters. Meanwhile, all of the areas we have, our policies are decided based on what these people in the cities want. So you end up seeing all kinds of crazy stuff like this happening. They're pushing for a $15 an hour minimum wage at the state level. Our governor, Tom Wolf. What he doesn't understand is in areas like where I live, what that will do is it'll shut down every small family-owned business in the town, in the entire county, basically. And the reason is because you have mom and pop shops around here that can only afford to pay $9-10 an hour. If they had to pay $15 an hour, they would go out of business immediately. Would Walmart go out of business? Would Dollar General? No. They would be able to absorb that short-term cost. And in effect, what that would give them would be a monopoly. They no longer have to compete with small local-owned businesses. And so then they would raise their prices and they would lay people off and they would get more electronics. So they needed less people working. And it would end up working out for them. They would end up making more money, these big businesses. That's because when they talk about, well, minimum wage, you can't survive off minimum wage, the cost of living. But what they're doing is they're looking at the cost of living in Philadelphia or in Pittsburgh. They're not looking at the cost of living in Clarion, Pennsylvania or Freiburg, Pennsylvania, the areas I live. The cost of living is much lower there, but so is the earning potential. And so if inevitably what will happen is if you raise that minimum wage, you'll see a lot of small businesses go out. You'll see rents and things like that raise the cost of all the your goods around here will go up. But that's just an example of what happens if you give the cities all the power. The founding fathers understood that we needed to have a two-tiered system where we have things like the Senate and the House of Representatives. So that way, each state, no matter how rural, no matter how urban, would be able to have a voice. They would have some kind of opinion. You even see, by the way, not just speaking of the Electoral College, you've seen some academics say that we should get rid of the Senate. That it's not fair that Idaho has the same amount of senators that California does. Now, keep in mind, by the way, California and the people there, at one point, they weren't one of the more populous states. That's been kind of the last 50 years that's occurring. I don't remember them complaining about the Electoral College when it was beneficial to them. Only when they see that they could gain more power do they start to complain about this. So what happens is if you have only these urban areas that are, if we banish the Electoral College, what you would see is you would have places like California and all the cities there. You would have like Chicago. You'd have like New York. They would decide all of our national elections, period. Anyone that was in flyover country that already doesn't have a voice would have even less of a voice. And it's funny because the same Democrats that always want to talk about helping disenfranchised people, they can't wait to smack around the rural areas of the country even more. They despise us. They hate us. And I'm not saying, I don't know why, like I do know why. They don't want people that are self-sufficient. They want people that are reliant on the government. That's what they want. They want a globalist system. They think that we're all, well, like Obama said, clinging to our guns and Bibles and things like that. So that's what they want. And so in this instance, they'll cheer for the urban elites over the disenfranchised. We always hear, the Democrats, they're looking out for the little guy. Yeah, well, not in this instance, right? And then there's other potential problems. So then not only would those elite coastal areas have all the say, but then we'd have the vast majority of landmass in this country wouldn't have any say whatsoever. And we also see that that's where a lot of things like food production and things like that happen. We already see what happens when you take family farms away, which is like this $15 minimum wage. That's another thing that happens there. You end up getting rid of small farms, and they end up conglomerating into these big corporate farms. But the same thing would happen politically. So the voice of the people in the center of the country would just be totally irrelevant. Then you would have other things such as, right now, each state controls their own election, so there's really not a lot of federal observance on the ground level when it comes to an election. Well, we already see, for example, the state of California that's saying illegals could vote in local elections, and we'll give them driver's license, and we're sanctuary, and we don't want to send them back, and blah, blah, blah. But oh, by the way, popular vote. It should be the popular vote. Do we really think that if the federal government isn't allowed in there, that they're not eventually going to have, which they may have already done, had tons of legals voting, and now they'll matter even more. Right now, yeah, okay, California's a lost cause. It's going to vote Democrat no matter what. But if it was the popular vote, what incentive would they have to not allow all these people? And the Democrats, not all of them, but a lot of them would do this because they feel they're morally justified. So they would say, sure, well, we'll just pretend, illegals aren't voting. Yes, we gave them, they're on the rolls. Yes, because they can vote in the local election. And yes, they have IDs and everything. And yes, we say that we're not going to adhere to federal law. And when it comes to, we're going to be a sanctuary state. But trust us. You can't look at our elections, but trust us. It's all on the up and up. Oh, and yeah, when you saw this with Obama, you saw districts that were like 100% voting for Obama. Thousands of people, not one person cast a vote for the other candidate. If it's a popular vote, that makes the impact of any type of fraud like that all the more worse. Which is another thing. We know that's why the Democrats want open borders. That's why so many of them are for these type of policies. They think these people will be potential votes in the future. If it was just a popular vote, then you would have to have there would be such a lack of trust in the result. You would need to be able to go, you would then have to have federal election officials that would have to go to every state, and the states wouldn't be allowed to have control anymore, which would then call for the states to say, oh, this is draconian, this is authoritarian, which would be a whole new can of worms. The way the system was set up with the Electoral College, it makes sense. It's not just that make sure that every state, no matter how small they are, has somewhat of a say in the outcome of the election, and that's the way it should be. And all these like sour grapes of, but if it was the popular vote, it doesn't matter. Hillary would have won the popular vote. You don't know what the outcome would have been if the rules had been popular vote wins in 2016. People would have campaigned in different areas and things like that. Here's an idea. Instead of complaining about the system and the way it's always been, maybe Hillary should have went to kind of Rust Belt type states and advocated for workers instead of playing identity politics. But she didn't. And the Democrats, most of them don't want to do that now. That's why I think someone like Biden would be a decent candidate, or even maybe someone like Young would be a better candidate than the others that are just looking to say reparations, identity politics, change the Electoral College, etc. So absolutely ridiculous that they're trying to change that institution. But like I said, it doesn't matter, it's not surprising because we already see they're trying to overwrite the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the concept of due process. And I don't just mean average Democrats. I'm talking about the people in the positions of power. Another thing they're trying to do, now they want to lower the voting age to 16. It's all things designed. Now, keep in mind, they have so much power. The establishment Democrats have so much power. They need more. They need it all. They aren't happy. So they all but 90% control academia, the mainstream media, entertainment industry, Silicon Valley. They need more, even in those instances. We need to censor conservatives on social media. We need to keep conservatives from speaking on college campuses. Again, not every Democrat believes this. I understand that. But I'm talking about the people in the position of power in the Democratic Party. The administrators in academia, the people that are running the entertainment industry, and things like that. We see how they act. And so they need more. Even with all those advantages, we still didn't win the presidential election? Well, then we'll just scrap the Constitution. We'll just totally change it then. And here's the truth. They're not going to be able to do it no matter what they're promising because they need to pass an amendment. And they're not going to find enough states that are dumb enough right now to say, yeah, we'll abolish the Electoral College and basically make sure we never have a voice again. It would be the clearest way to start actual, like, even more fomentation of hatred between people that would live in these states that would no longer have a voice versus the coastal elites. It's always the coastal elites. Like, the establishment Democratic Party, they pretend to be the party of the little guy, but in reality, they're the party of the super wealthy. That's who they are, who are pretending to like socialism. I wonder why. Could it be that they know that socialism's not going to affect them? They'll still be able to find loopholes. They'll just keep their money offshore. All these Silicon Valley type people, of course. So then we get to the Supreme Court, and this example is even more ridiculous, where now we're actually hearing, I know Warren and Booker both came out and said they would consider packing the Supreme Court. Basically what they're saying is right now we have 9 Supreme Court justices. Well, the Democrats have used the courts to basically pass legislation that they couldn't. So they've had activist courts that constantly, the courts are supposed to interpret the law, but they're basically passing law. Something like Roe v. Wade, which is a terrible decision in my opinion, regardless of what you think about abortion rights. The Constitution says nothing about abortion. Our Constitution, the 10th Amendment, says quite specifically, if there's an issue that's not expressly written about in the Constitution, it becomes the role of the states to pass laws on that. Okay, abortion should be a state issue. Yet the court wrote the law in Roe v. Wade to say that somehow the 4th Amendment applied to abortion, which it didn't, which is a ridiculous argument. But that's what we see from the Democratic Party. And so when Trump got to appoint justices, they're so upset, and because they feel, oh, this is one of our most powerful tools to pass forth laws because we can't get them passed in Congress. So we'll use this. So what's their solution? Instead of, okay, well, we just need to win more elections and then we'll be able to appoint more justices eventually. Their solution is, well, the next time we win, we'll just put, what is it? We got 5 conservatives to 4 Democrats. Okay, we'll put 3 more Democrat justices in then. How's that sound? Now we have a Democratic court. Can't they really can't see how stupid this is. That it's just going to end up basically, then the next person will just come out and say, oh, they're not Republican. I'll put 15 people on the court. They don't see the stupidity of it. It's just really dumb. So, yeah, it's just all naked power grab from the Democrats, and we should reject it. It's just more proof that they shouldn't have any ability to rule, especially the people they put forth. So, all right, I'm going to head out of here. I think my wife's getting out of work, but thanks, everyone, for listening, and we'll talk to you soon. I'll be putting